we
This
ask that you
conference
bring
will
your
now be
book.
recorded.
We will be pulling lessons out of here weekly. Also bring your name placard so that Dr. Thompson and I, as well as your peers, can get comfortable with learning one another's names. And then the sign-in sheet that I sent out, that I've been circulating, this will be passed out weekly as well. And you would just check off or initial next to your name. And that's how we'll keep our record of attendance. Thank you.
Right. So now these sessions are recorded because I hit the record button. So if you missed one, we'll throw it up there, and as long as you go and watch it and comment on the discussion board, you get credit for that week. And Sanette and I are working on getting a certificate for people who attend, I think like all of the classes but one. But try to attend all of them if you can. The other thing is, if you do the survey before and after, we'll also send you a report on how your scores change over the semester. And it's really helping me in a research project. So I'm trying to collect data to back doing this concentration, and so this would be really helpful. So anyway, just please remember to do the post surveys. We had like 80 people on the pre-survey, and we had 20 on the post, which means, what's our sample size? 20, which is, much smaller. So anyway, asking you all to do that. So anyway, let me get into it. So today we're gonna cover just the basics of positive psychology and gratitude. Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's what I was saying. Is on Canvas, my slides are all there, as well as the video recording. So, and I'll run you through it next week when we have a little bit more time. So, let me get started. Yeah, and Sanette monitors the positive psych email. So if you email there, you'll be reaching her as well. Okay, so what is positive psychology? Let me just ask, what were your initial notions of it, besides it being positive? Yeah.
I guess for me, it's more about empowering yourself as opposed to focusing on maybe pathology or like unlocking the potential that you have within you.
That's exactly it, right? So Martin Seligman came along in 1992 and said, hey, we've spent all of our energy in psychology focusing on deficits or problems or illness. And we totally forgot to study what makes people great leaders, what makes people flourish, what makes people have, what makes them thrive. And so began the study of this, and it's actually done really well, and I think it's had a large impact in the world. Okay, so a lot of people would ask, well, why bother with happiness? And, is happiness really important? I see this a lot in IO psychology. Do we need happy workers? And people will say, no, we need productive workers. But the truth is that happy kind of comes before productive. And this is, as you know, as psychologists, this is a reliable and valid experience, and we can measure it. And so when you ask how happy you are, people answer in a way that correlates with how other people see them, right? So this measure that we use, we have what we call triangulation agreement. And so there's 3 areas of control that we have that directly impact our happiness. And one is how satisfied we are about the past, right? So if we're worrying or have regret, that would be the opposite. And we can really impact how we view the past by being grateful and also forgiving. So when bad things have happened to us, there's a tremendous amount out there that I don't cover in these courses, but forgiveness is really powerful to increasing your happiness about the past. The second thing is optimism about the future. And we covered optimism and hope in last semester. This semester we're going to cover character strengths. But basically, feeling good about the future and having goals can lead to happiness. And lastly, happiness about the present, which can involve pleasure, savoring, flow, meaning, and purpose. So one of the big ways to have happiness in the present is to be mindful. And we'll cover that in week 3. So Let me ask, how much control do you think you have on your happiness?
Um,
All of it. You can see you guys are so optimistic. You're here in the positive psych class and you're so optimistic.
I'm trying to get there. So.
You're trying to get there. But think about it in your life. Any other guesses? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think I have more control of that. I think I have more privilege.
Right. So situation, right? Then I would also say some of us are born with happier or higher like positive affects. So some people are born with like a brighter disposition, right? So here's what we know. 50% of it is genetics, or this set point, right? And I kind of think of it as a range, like a set range. 10% of it is circumstances. So believe it or not, things like winning the lottery or becoming a paraplegic impact you for about 6 months, and then you return to the previous happiness levels that you had. So we think about these things as being catastrophic or wonderful, when in actuality our genetics are kind of homeostasis. Our tendency to go back to the baseline is pretty strong. But 40% of that we can change. And we can change that through what's called intentional activities. And I'm going to teach you one today, right? I like to think of this intentional activities, it's like going to the gym, right? We can do things to directly impact our health. Like we can get enough exercise or walk or take extra stairs that impact our health. And it's the same thing with your mind. You can do direct activities that keep your mind in shape. Okay, so I think we all know negative affect is bad, right? It doesn't feel good. But the other thing that's important is that it actually harms us physically, right? It can slow wound healing. It diminishes the strength of immune responses to vaccines. These are all, proven studies. Enhance the susceptibility to infectious agents, right? So they actually did a study and they measured people's happiness and then they injected them with the cold. And the people that were happier were less likely to get the cold, right? So, and it can also reactivate latent viruses. So is happiness really important? These negative emotions and vice versa, positive emotions, have an effect on our central nervous system, our immune system, our endocrine system, which we're really learning how important that is, all of our hormones. So think about cortisol, right? And then our cardiovascular system. In my study of positive psychology, there are a lot of studies that look at the heart and what stress and negative emotions can do to cardiovascular health. So at work, is happiness important? So there's a lot of biopsychologists that think, no, it's not. But happy people are more likely to secure job interviews, be positively evaluated by their supervisor, have superior performance and productivity, and also handle managerial positions, which involve a lot of interactions with humans and development and mentoring. They do those better. They also have less absenteeism, less turnover. They're less likely to experience burnout. They're less likely to quit or be in conflict with coworkers. And they actually like their jobs, right? How many of your friends can say they like their jobs? Nobody. Okay, so happiness is also related to income. Guys, yeah, the more happiness you have, the higher your income, right? It's related to helping fellow co-workers. And if you're interested, I was in the Trib yesterday talking about how everybody came together in the snowstorm. And I talked about that generates positive emotions and it ties us to a sense of meaning and purpose. Because the reporter that interviewed me was saying she felt so disappointed and blah after it was over because everybody came together, and I was encouraging her, that can still continue on. You can still do random acts of kindness and continue that good feeling that you had during the storm. Happiness is also related to receiving social support, which really helps you buffer and cope. So one of the most important studies, I think, done in positive psychology, and I think this is really important for clinical folks, is looking at the 3 good things, which we're going to do in a minute, which is where you really reflect on 3 things you're grateful for, or 3 good things that happened to you. And people who did this for a week, they wrote this down for a week. 6 months later, had less depressive symptoms, and 6 months later had higher happiness. I don't know if you can see the chart, right? But you've got the placebo, and then you've got the three good things, which is the intervention group. So I think one of the important things we're taking away from happiness is short interventions like this can do better than medication, and can have a longer lasting effect once it's over. I think this is pretty hard to believe, but this is a well-known study. Okay, so one of the interventions I like to use is called a positive introduction. I think it's a great way to start a training, or if you're working with children, any kind of group effort where you need to do some sort of icebreaker, or you want people to get to know each other. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is to visualize a time when you were at your best and utilizing many of your strengths. So just imagine a time in your life when you were really feeling on top of the world. What did it look like? What did it feel like? Really activate your senses. Try to go back in your body and feel what that felt like. And then I want you to partner up. Okay, we've got even numbers. And I want you to introduce yourself through a 1 to 2 minute story about yourself in this moment. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. And so for those of you online, I'm going to ask you to write a quick paragraph in the chat, kind of reflecting on this, and then sort of introduce yourself with that as much as you can write in the next couple of minutes.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so let me bring us back and ask. So what was that like when you told that story? How did that feel?
Energizing.
Yeah, energizing, right? Little boost of self-confidence. Yeah. Sort of, what else? Yeah.
It's kind of difficult. I think for us, we experienced it was difficult to get started.
Mm.
It was hard to think of ourselves in that light.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, and then kind of awkward to, I felt like I was boasting about it. So I had to kind of try to lead.
Yeah.
After, I agree.
Yeah, afterwards, yeah, but no getting started. What else? Anybody on this side?
I had a really hard time thinking of something.
A really hard time thinking of something. Okay, so just sort of summarizing what the audience said so everyone can hear it online. So it was very energizing. It was hard to get started. It was hard to do that. It felt like boasting a little bit. It was hard to think of something. So, I think part of it might be getting used to activating that piece of ourselves. But it's a good way to get people to immediately invoke some positive emotions about yourself, which then opens up people to do this. So I keep saying I'm going to do this before every stats class, right? Like just kind of get a jolt of positive emotions going because there's always so much anxiety. Okay, so the key points to an introduction to positive psychology, and today we really talked about positive emotions, and the point is introducing more positive emotions into our life. The key is happiness is being at peace with your past, which means looking back at your past with satisfaction and being able to express gratitude, as well as optimism and hope for your future, and in the moment being able to experience pleasure and positive emotions. So one thing that activity did was it brought something from your past and generated some positive emotions in the present. All right, so what I have for you in your handouts is something called 12 intentional activities. And for those of you that are online, I emailed it to the whole group so you can access it there. But basically, the 12 are listed here, and there is a link, and this is another reason I emailed it to you so you can copy and paste this hyperlink. There's an extended, this workbook I think is like 30 pages, but I didn't want to print it all out for everyone. So if you go there, what goes through each one of these 12 interventions, it tells you examples of ways to do the intervention. It tells you why it works, what the research is behind it. Yeah.
Someone said they can't see the screen.
Ooh. Come on. Thank you. Okay. Okay. So anyway, the idea is also there are 12 of these. Some of these will be a good fit with you, and some will not. I remember I looked at some of these and I was like, yeah, no, that's not going to work for me, right? So what I encourage you to do is look through and what jumps out, what leaps out to you, right? So the gratitude leaps out to me. The kindness leaps out at me. Well, it turns out, we'll discuss in a couple of weeks, kindness is one of my top strengths, right? So that's an easy one for me. Spirituality, not going to happen for me, right? So from other people, it's their first one. So the idea is that you pick and choose which one is going to be important for you. And then I give one example on the backside, coping, just sort of what you're going to see, but there's actually a lot more. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to pick one and to take 1 minute each day in the next week to implement, right? So one of them could be gratitude, and I'm going to teach you how to do that next. But you could also pick another one as well, right? So leading us into gratitude. So let me ask, how do you feel when you're grateful? Amazing. Warm. That's good, like body sensation. Optimistic. Yeah. So this is one of the most powerful things we have to pull on. Okay, and gratitude is a sense of thankfulness and joy in response to receiving a gift, whether the gift be tangible benefit from a specific other or a moment of peaceful bliss evoked by natural beauty, right? So one thing that's easy to be grateful for is our station in life, where we are, that we're able to be in a graduate school, that we're in a safe environment. There's so many things that we're born into that are beyond our control, right? And so I think being reflective of that, and also reflective that others aren't as lucky, right? So it can kind of, in some ways, help us be grateful and also motivate us to be more pro-social, right? And think about others. We experience gratitude when we affirm that something good has happened to us and we recognize that someone or something else is responsible. Okay, and gratitude is present when there's a benefit that's evaluated positively and it's not attributed to our own effort, and the benefit was rendered intentionally by someone else, right? Sometimes I also say, like I just gave an example of, it could be luck or situation beyond your control that you're also grateful for. And I find that I'm grateful for other things that don't meet these criteria. But I think what's important is that to note is that when there's an expectation of reciprocity that's felt by the beneficiary, gratitude greatly diminishes. So if somebody does something nice for you and then they expect, they're expecting something back, you don't get that feeling of gratefulness, right? Almost kind of starts to turn into resentment, right? Because it's control. Okay, so gratitude acts as a moral barometer, and that means it directs our attention and focuses us on what's good in our life. It's also a motive, so it helps us pay it forward and helps us become more pro-social. And then it's also a reinforcer because it feels good, we want to do it again. And that's sort of what I was talking about in the Trib article. People start to shift the perception of themselves and say, I'm a person that does good. And that really connects with a sense of meaning and purpose. So what are the benefits from being grateful? Let me ask. What do you think?
Just have a better ease at life.
Okay, better ease at life. Yeah. What else?
It makes you also more optimistic.
More optimistic? Yeah.
Perspective is different from other people who aren't so grateful.
Right. So your perspective is different. Great. Okay, I'm going to run through a bunch that have been shown time and time again in the research. You've got more satisfaction with life. You're more pro-social and other-centered. Less maladaptive self-preoccupation, right? So less focused on me, stuff about me, my stuff I hate. Better sleep and vitality. More optimism. It also enhances the experience. So when we have an experience and we're grateful for it, it stretches it out and it makes it, it extends the positive emotion. It enables savoring, really being in the present moment. And it also consummates the experience. So when we're grateful for something, it closes the loop in our brain. This experience is over and that was great, right? And our brain's always kind of looking for that finale. It counters the hedonic treadmill. So when we get the hedonic treadmill is when we get used to things. Like we get used to our standard of life. We get used to this and we start to want more, right? So if we're grateful, it helps keep us from just taking the things we have for granted. It also, in the same fashion, counters materialism. And it decreases social comparison, which is a big source of unhappiness. Right? So one of the things we have in in positive psychology is you can't be blessed and stressed at the same time. And it decreases stress. It reminds us that good things are happening. So the HeartMath Institute did an appreciation intervention and found that being grateful significantly boosts the immune system, just like, it's a positive emotion. And studies of increasing positive emotions through gratitude decrease blood pressure, stress hormones, and depression. It also increased positive mood, vitality, and general well-being. So one of the big theories in positive psychology is called the broaden and build theory. Has anyone heard of it? No. Okay. Broaden and build. And this is by Barbara Fredrickson. And she has a couple of great books out. One called Positivity Resonance and the other called Love 2.0. And she has some great TED Talks. So if you want to find her, and possibly if I remember to, I'll put some on the Canvas board. But anyway, her theory that's gotten a lot of attention is that when you have a positive emotion, well, actually, her scientific studies, it starts to open you up. It literally opens your perspective and what you can see. It opens your mind. It makes you more creative. It makes you more open. And therefore, you're better able to see resources and things around you, and you're better able to grab a hold of opportunity, which increases positive emotions, which increases it. So it's called this upward spiral. And I think we're all really familiar with the opposite of this. You know, that day that you wake up, you stub your toe, you can't find your keys, and things just keep getting worse and worse, right? That's your literally your vision field narrowing, everything becoming very negative, very pessimistic, right? And then we're in this terrible state of mind, right? So when you feel that, it's super easy. You can stop and be thankful. There's many different things you can do, but when you feel that, I think it's important to recognize it's just a spiral down. It can be stopped, and you can easily be spiraling upwards by doing interventions for positive emotions. And I'll just share something that I found really interesting. When I stopped teaching this class in November, a few weeks after, I found myself really down, really blue. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And part of it was I had been practicing so much with 3 classes a week that when I wasn't practicing through teaching, I was like, oh, you know, I'm not getting that injection of good feeling. So it was just really pointed to me like that the practice is so important. Okay, so we just have a few minutes left, and what I want to ask you to do is to do the 3 blessings activity, and that is to write down 3 things you're grateful for and why you're grateful. And so I'm going to give you a minute to do that, and then I'm going to give you a minute to share with your partner. And online, I'm just going to ask you guys to write down your 3 things and post them in the chat box. And I'm going to go through and ask them, see what questions you guys have. Happy birthday, Phyllis. And Anita asked if the PowerPoints and stuff were online, and they're from last semester, and they are. So if anybody's looking for them, they'll be in the class. So those of you that are new, we'll add you today.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so let me bring you back and ask you, how was that, sharing the three things you're grateful for?
Just grateful to share.
Just grateful to share? Yeah. Yeah, shifts perspective. Hmm. Did any of you feel like, yeah, I could have kept going? Like you started listing them and you're like, actually, there's a lot, 3 and yeah. Okay, so just to summarize, why does gratitude work? It creates this upward spiral, it increases positivity, enhances the experience, enables savoring, consummates the experience, counters hedonic treadmill, counters materialism, decreases social comparison, and decreases stress. So how do you use it? Right, so there's a couple of different ways to do it. So there's gratitude ping pong that I've used, where you take a ball or some object that you throw. Did we do this last time? No, we didn't. Okay. But you literally, you throw it to your partner. So like I would throw it to you, Jada. And when you catch it, you have to say something you're thankful for. And then you throw it back to me and I catch it and I have to say, and you just keep going back and forth. Like you might hold it for a minute. But anyway, that's another great icebreaker to get a group in a good mood. You can do gratitude journals. So a lot of people write down before they go to bed every night 3 things they're grateful for. I do it with my daughter, and she's 5 and she's just starting to write. So now she wants to write it herself, even though it's like one word. It's like, trampoline or something like that, So that, and I think that's also comes straight out of Marty Seligman's book on the optimistic child. So before you sleep, it's really important to sort of organize your brain around what you're thankful for. Helps you see the things the next day. Gratitude letters. So you can write a letter. I think I shared before, I did this with Jon Stewart when he went off the air. I just wrote a lot, I didn't send it to him, but I just wrote a letter about how grateful I was because I thought he'd really made a shift in the industry. And he had done so many positive things and pointed out some things that were just really important to me. You can have gratitude primers. So alarms, Post-it, wristbands, anything that just gives you that reminder. Another thing that I try to do every day is blessing before eating. So we go around and the dinner table and ask people, with small kids, I say, what was great about your day, or, that kind of thing. But we just say what we're grateful for. And then there's a more complicated exercise on the internet called the Daily Dozen that you can Google if you're interested in really complex activities. Okay, so to close out today's class, what can you do starting today to implement one of these gratitude activities, taking only a minute or less a day? Right?
When you wake up in the morning, just grateful that you woke up.
Right, being grateful when you wake up. So what I'm going to ask you to do, and I think we have 1 or 2 boards this week because I'm asking for 2 different things, but just what kind of positive intervention can you do and what kind of gratitude intervention can you do? Practice this for a few days, and before we meet next Thursday, write about it in the discussion board. And again, it only has to be a couple sentences, or it could be more, whatever you feel comfortable with. But with that, we are done. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
All right. And if you didn't take the survey, please, if you can, take the survey because I'm going to probably turn it off tomorrow.
Everybody sign the signage.
Thank you guys online.
I mean, I'm interested.